We're going to Michael Phelps, Beijing Olympics 2008.
This moment, it's a perfect illustration of performance under immediate extreme duress.
So set the scene for us.
Okay, it's August 13th, 2008. You're in the water cube in Beijing. The pressure is just immense. Phelps is chasing Mark Spitz's legendary record. He's trying to get an unprecedented 8 gold medals in a single games.
Which is just an insane goal.
It's absurd. And it requires 17 demanding, high-stakes swims over just 9 days. The margin for error is basically zero.
And we're at the men's 200-meter butterfly final. He has to win this one to keep the whole dream alive. It's a critical moment. And then seconds into the race, it all goes wrong.
It all goes wrong. The moment he hits the water, his goggles start filling up. Now, you might imagine, a slow leak, a little trickle.
Something you can manage.
Right. But the source accounts, they emphasize this as a rapid and progressing blackout. By the time he hit that first wall and started the second 50 meters, his vision was completely gone.
I can't even imagine that. All your visual anchors, the black line on the bottom of the pool that keeps you straight, the T-shape that tells you the wall is coming.
All gone. Vanished.
In a sport that's timed to the 100th of a second, losing your vision when you're moving that fast, that's terrifying. Your first instinct has to be panic.
It has to be. You tense up, you lose your rhythm, you risk a disastrous turn, or you just start flailing, improvising. This is the exact moment where motivation completely fails you. Motivation is just screaming, panic, stop, tear the goggles off.
But he doesn't do any of that.
He doesn't panic, he doesn't improvise, he executes. He falls back on a response that, on the surface, seems almost absurdly simple. But it was the product of years and years of disciplined rehearsal.
He starts to count.
He just counts.
He counts his strokes. I mean, the simplicity of that action is just incredible, given the chaos of the moment. He explained it later. He knew he couldn't see the tee, couldn't see the line, couldn't fix the goggles because they were double capped.
So there was no solution in the moment, only a system. He immediately reverted to his backup plan.
And that plan wasn't made up on the spot?
Not at all. It was automaticity. As he put it, he was purely going by stroke count. He had ingrained the exact number of pulls, the timing, the rhythm, for every single length of that pool. He didn't need to see the wall.
His body knew the math.
His body knew the map. The muscle memory was the map.
So that last length, 50 meters, completely blind, he's taking that entirely on faith. But it's not some mystical, adrenaline-fueled faith.
No, it's faith in the system, faith in the discipline he had banked years and years before that moment. He trusted the system over the sensation of panic.
And the result is, it's history. He gets the gold medal and a new world record, 1.52.03.
The race didn't reward his willpower in that moment. It rewarded his preparation.
But wait a second. For you or me, for the average person, being told to just count your strokes in the middle of total chaos sounds like a recipe for even deeper panic.
Right.
It's just another thing to remember when your brain is already overloaded. So how did Phelps and his coach, Bob Bowman, make sure that counting became the path of least resistance, not just another thing to forget?
That's where the real discipline is. And the source material was really clear on Bowman's philosophy. They didn't just train Phelps to swim fast. They trained him to rehearse failure.
Rehearse failure.
Yeah. Bowman would explicitly, intentionally introduce disruption during practice. He might suddenly tell Phelps mid-set that his goggles were broken and he had to finish anyway. Or he changed the interval unpredictably. He was forcing him to perform without perfect conditions.
So they were creating a kind of mental inoculation. They were practicing the task plus a disruption. So when the real disruption came, it wasn't new. It wasn't terrifying.
Precisely. The principle here is that discipline preloads the response. If you only ever practice when conditions are perfect, when the real stress hits, you have no rehearsed option, so you panic. But if you practice the contingency plan, the contingency becomes the default reflex.
Stress forces you back to your most ingrained habit.
Exactly. So the goal is to make the correct habit, the stroke count, the most ingrained one you have.
I think this is where most of us, in our own lives, fall down. Our default habit is always, I'll figure it out when it happens. The disciplined habit is to pre-rehearse what happens when the worst happens. Most of us only train for the good days, the day we're well rested, the day we actually feel motivated.
And pressure, which is your metaphorical flooded goggles, it doesn't care about your feelings. It shows up as low sleep or a sudden rejection from a client or just intense boredom with the task.
Right.
And if you haven't scripted a response to those derailers, you're basically outsourcing your performance to luck.
Okay, so let's translate this. How do we turn this principle into, mental touch typing for ourselves? We need some tools.
The first step is acknowledging the enemy. You have to write down your flooded goggles list. For you, the listener, you need to identify the 3 to 5 recurring disruptions that most often derail your work or your health goals.
So be specific. Is it the anxiety you feel right before starting? Is it a rude email that throws off your whole morning? Is it that feeling of inadequacy you get 10 minutes into a difficult task?
Exactly. Name the specific friction points. You have to know what they are.
And once you've named the derailer, the next tool, which comes right out of behavioral science, is the if-then script.
This tactic is all about removing that internal negotiation. We're not trying to rely on willpower here. We're trying to create an automatic chain reaction, a reflex.
So the script becomes mandatory. You make the decision when you're calm, under low pressure, so you can execute it when you're under high pressure.
Yes. For example, if I feel unmotivated when I sit down at my desk, then I will open the document and type for exactly 10 minutes anyway. That is non-negotiable.
You don't debate it. You don't ask if the 10 minutes is worth it. You just execute the system. The if is the feeling, the cue. The then is the mandated action.
And to make that stronger, you should actively seek to train under mild friction. Don't always wait for the perfect quiet morning or the perfect playlist. Do some of your work with constraints.
Set a timer for 20 minutes instead of an hour. Work when you're a little bit tired. Have a small distraction present. You're learning to execute the core task without demanding perfect comfort, just like Phelps learned to swim without perfect vision.
And following his specific lead, we have to count something concrete. Strokes, reps, pages written, calls made, lines of code.
Why is counting so important?
Because counting pulls the task out of the realm of emotion and puts it squarely in the realm of data. You're no longer asking, do I feel like I worked hard enough? You're asking, did I hit the number 125?
That's a huge distinction. It reduces the emotional load entirely. Okay, so for you, the listener, if you're ready to implement this, here are the micro steps for today. Pick one goal you keep waiting to feel ready for.
Then choose one disruption that commonly stops you. Fatigue, time pressure, distraction, name it.
And finally, execute a 15-minute controlled rep right now under that mild disruption. And track one measure, just one. Count something.
Because the highest definition of discipline is this. You are not trying to prove you can win on your perfect days. That's easy. You are rehearsing how you operate when the water fills your goggles. You're building the mental mechanism to keep counting strokes when panic is screaming at you to stop.
Okay, so that shifts the focus from managing this kind of individual chaos to managing systemic chaos, and that's a perfect transition. We're moving from the intense drama of the pool to the corporate pressure cooker with Paul O'Neill at Alcoa.
This is a masterclass in using discipline to choose one single center of gravity that reorganizes everything else around it.
So what's the scene here?
The year is 1987. The setting is a fancy ballroom in New York City, packed with Wall Street investors and analysts. Alcoa, the global aluminum giant, is underperforming badly.
So the expectation is the usual thing. The new CEO comes out, shows a bunch of charts, profit forecasts, market strategy, reassurances about inventory levels.
Exactly. The standard corporate playbook.
Yeah.
But O'Neill gets up there and he completely upends the entire meeting. He immediately shifts the conversation away from finance to something the market considered a total category error.
Worker safety.
Worker safety. He stood up there and said his primary goal was to make Alcoa the safest company in America. He set a non-negotiable target of 0 injuries.
What was the reaction in the room?
Accounts describe a profound silence, almost disbelief. These analysts were there to debate earnings multiples, and O'Neill is talking about broken arms. Some investors literally got up and walked out. They called their clients and told them to sell the stock immediately.
I mean, he was risking everything, right? His reputation, shareholder confidence. He was completely ignoring the short-term financial demands that a CEO is explicitly hired to fix. How did he justify that?
He justified it because he understood that motivation, the corporate version of it, the cheerleading, telling employees to just work harder or be more productive, is inherently scattered.
Right.
Most struggling companies, and frankly most struggling individuals, try to fix 7 priorities at once. Productivity, quality, culture, cost control, morale.
And that diffused effort, it basically guarantees failure everywhere.
Exactly. Discipline, on the other hand, concentrates effort. O'Neill's whole strategy was to reject that diffuse motivational message and instead install a keystone habit.
A keystone habit?
Yes. One single behavior so profound and complex that if you execute it successfully, it forces improvement across the entire operating system.
And for him, that was safety.
Safety was a perfect keystone. Just think about what it actually takes to achieve 0 injuries. I mean, really think about it. It demands radical attention to detail and process integrity.
You can't have zero injuries if your machinery is poorly maintained.
Or if your supply chain is disorganized, or if communication between shifts is sloppy.
So he realized that a lack of safety wasn't the core problem. It was a symptom of overall organizational sloppiness.
That's it, exactly. By attacking the symptom with such relentless focus, he was forced to fix the root cause of every other inefficiency in the company.
How did that work in practice?
Well, safety requires instantaneous, honest reporting. So O'Neill instituted a mandatory rule. If an injury occurred anywhere in the world, the relevant vice president had to report the root cause and the plan for preventing it from happening again to him personally within 24 hours.
Wow.
This forced executives out of their corner offices and their spreadsheets and onto the factory floor to actually understand the real-world processes.
So pursuing zero injuries demands transparent measurement, root cause analysis, and consistent standards everywhere. You can't be safe while also tolerating sloppy financial reporting or poor quality control. The two are incompatible.
The pursuit of that single non-negotiable keystone habit fixed the organizational machinery that produced every other outcome, including, by the way, profit. Alcoa's profits hit record highs under his leadership.
The default habit is chasing the 7 outcomes: profit, growth, and hoping good habits just magically appear.
Right. The discipline habit is to install one non-negotiable process that improves the machinery that produces the outcomes. O'Neill wasn't just announcing a value. He was building a mandatory, escalating system around an unmissable focus.
This resonates so deeply with the personal struggle. I mean, if you, the listener, are trying to be more disciplined in 5 areas at once, diet, exercise, reading, writing, networking, you will perpetually bargain with yourself in all 5 areas.
I'll trade one for the other. I didn't exercise, but I did read.
Exactly. But if you pick one keystone, let's say a fixed, non-negotiable wake-up time, it creates this anchor point that makes every other choice that day just a little bit easier.
Discipline isn't about doing more. It's about choosing the one habit you absolutely refuse to break because you understand the leverage it provides for everything else.
So let's talk application. How do we choose, and more importantly, how do we maintain this single keystone habit without having to rely on constant, exhausting willpower?
Okay, first, we apply the concentration principle. Choose one keystone action for the next 30 days. Not a vague goal like get healthier.
It has to be in action.
In action. Walk 30 minutes daily. Process all email to 0 once a day. Write 300 words daily. Just one for 30 days.
Second, the measurement principle. You have to make it measurable and binary. It's either done or not done.
Yes. Yes or no. No gray area. Did I hit the number? That binary nature removes all the emotional ambiguity that motivation loves to exploit.
And third, and this is really where the systems thinking comes in, you need an escalation rule.
Yes. If you want to avoid relying on willpower, you have to anticipate failure. The rule is this. If you miss your keystone habit twice in 1 week, you don't just try harder the next week. That's a failed strategy.
So what do?
You change the environment or you reduce the target.
Wait, reduce the target. Doesn't that feel like you're lowering the standard, like you're giving up?
It's actually reinforcing the system. If your goal of 300 words a day is failing because your meetings are running long, you don't abandon the habit. You change the minimum target to 150 words. Or you switch the cue from after lunch to before my first coffee.
Ah, I see. The system adapts to ensure execution. The most important thing isn't the volume of the work.
It's the unbroken chain of adherence. The streak itself becomes the reward. The system has to be robust enough to survive your low-energy days.
So the moment you miss, the system should trigger a preventative response, not just a guilt trip.
Exactly. You're tracking a leading indicator every day, treating your commitment like O'Neill treated those safety reports. It's that serious.
Okay, so for the listener, the microsteps are: write down your single keystone habit now.
Then, set the minimum so low it's almost embarrassing to refuse. 5 minutes, 100 words, 1 block around the neighborhood.
And finally, lock it into a fixed cue that already exists in your life, after the coffee is brewed, before you check Slack, as soon as you sit down in the car after work.
Stop asking for more motivation. Just pick one keystone habit, make it non-negotiable, and then watch how the requirement for excellence in that one small area forces every other process in your life to improve.
This idea of anchoring, it leads us directly to how elite performers anchor their work in fixed time and fixed environment. And for that, we have to talk about Kobe Bryant.
When you look at the sheer, relentless volume of consistent output, you have to look at Kobe. The way he banked time on task often when everyone else was still asleep, is legendary.
The story we're focusing on comes from Las Vegas, 2008. The U.S. men's basketball Redeem team is training for the Beijing Olympics.
And these are the best players in the world. They're all superstars, accustomed to chaotic schedules and bursts of intense performance. But Kobe had a system, a non-negotiable system that just cut through all that noise.
It starts with a 4:14 a.m. call to the athletic trainer, right?
That's right. The trainer, Robert Lara, he made a polite offer for extra work, which, most players would ignore or just treat as a hypothetical. Yeah, sure, maybe sometime.
But Kobe treated it like a contract.
A fixed contract. He was there, on the court, at 4:15 a.m. sharp. He worked on conditioning and movement for 75 minutes. But the crucial detail is what happened next.
The trainer leaves, right? He goes to get some rest before the mandatory team scrimmage at 11 a.m., and he assumes Kobe's done too.
Of course. But when the whole team arrives for practice later that morning, Kobe is still on the court, alone, still shooting, still working.
So the trainer asks him, when did you finally finish? And Kobe's response is just perfect. He says, I'm finishing now.
The revelation here wasn't the time of day. It was the standard. Kobe explained he wasn't there early because he felt inspired or particularly energized. He was there early because his goal for the session was 800 makes.
Not attempts, makes. Successful shots through the hoop.
And he stayed until he hit that number.
That is the gap. That's the whole thing right there. LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, they were just arriving to begin their team practice. Kobe was finishing a full workday that he had quietly banked while his competition was sleeping.
The difference wasn't talent. Not at that level. It was the conversion of a vague intention into a measured, time-bound execution.
So this is the principle. Discipline converts intention into a calendar event. If your goal is just, I want to write more or I want to train harder, it's vague. You're completely reliant on your feelings.
But if your goal is anchored to a specific time, 4:15 a.m., and a measurable finish line 800 makes, your emotions get a much smaller vote in the matter.
That combination of a fixed time, which removes the negotiation, and a measurable finish line, which removes the vagueness, that feels like the ultimate anti-procrastination hack.
It is. The default habit for most of us is waiting for the perfect internal weather. For energy, confidence, inspiration. Discipline is choosing a clock and treating it like gravity. It's just a law of your day.
And this relies on the tiny entry rule.
Yes. The goal on your bad days isn't to have a great workout or write a perfect chapter. The goal is just to start.
5 minutes, 1 page, 1 set. Attendance is what's non-negotiable.
Right. And if you can just force yourself to show up to attend, often the momentum will take over. But the system doesn't rely on momentum. It only relies on attendance.
And you have to eliminate the friction to start. We can all channel a little bit of Kobe's discipline by just prepping the night before, lay out your gym clothes, open the document on your computer, block out the time on your calendar.
You should not have to make a cognitive decision when that alarm goes off. You should only have to execute the first tiny pre-planned step.
And we can connect this idea of a fixed time system to the broader environment through the marathon legend, Eliud Kipchoge.
If Kobe shows us the power of a fixed clock, Kipchoge shows us the power of a systemized life.
So we shift from the basketball court in Vegas to the Kaptagat training camp in Kenya. Kipchoge's environment is famous for its high altitude, its quiet intensity, and its relentless grinding consistency.
And his routine is incredibly simple. It's almost deliberately ordinary. That simplicity is the entire point.
So the sources describe his work as this consistent loop. Familiar, brutally challenging sessions repeated week in, week out.
The training isn't about some secret new method. It's about the relentless, boring, non-negotiable execution of a proven template, over and over again.
So in Kaptagat, discipline isn't just a habit. It becomes the actual architecture of your daily life. The whole environment is engineered to reduce temptation and to reduce decision fatigue.
Everything points toward the next scheduled session. There are very few other choices to make.
And this all leads to his really powerful mindset, his quote, "Only the disciplined ones are free in life. If you are undisciplined, you are a slave to your moods."
That is the philosophical core of this entire deep dive. We think of discipline as restrictive. We think of it as a set of rules and sacrifices. Kipchoge sees it as the ultimate source of liberation.
It's a profound perspective flip.
It's huge. If you're undisciplined, you are constantly negotiating with your feelings. You're waiting for motivation to grant you permission to work. You are literally a slave to these transient emotions.
But if you're disciplined, you act first. And your feelings, whether they're good or bad, are forced to catch up to the reality that you have already created with your actions.
And the visible reward for all this systemization was the INEOS 1.59 challenge in Vienna. He ran the marathon distance in 1.59.40.2.
An unbelievable achievement.
But that moment, that historical achievement, it wasn't a sudden motivated burst of greatness. It was just the public result of hundreds and hundreds of unseen, scheduled mornings in Captiguide, where the system got the work done regardless of how he felt that day.
So consistency is entirely a problem of system design, not willpower. A stable routine reduces the daily tax of decision fatigue. A simple, intentional environment reduces the number of temptations you have to say no to.
You build a life where the most productive option is also the easiest option.
So let's combine Kobe and Kipchoge into practical takeaways.
Okay, first you have to design your camp. Choose one fixed location and one fixed time where your most important, non-negotiable habit happens. Same chair, same desk, same hour, you have 4 or 5 days a week. Anchor the habit in space and time.
Second, write one non-negotiable block on your calendar for tomorrow. Make it reasonable, 20 to 40 minutes. But you block it like it's a meeting with the CEO that cannot be missed or rescheduled under any circumstances.
And third, for that block, define a measurable finish line. 500 words, 30 minutes of Zone 2 exercise, 20 cold calls. And critically, you must set a minimum version for your low-energy days.
So 100 words or a 10-minute walk.
Exactly. And you promise yourself you will execute that minimum no matter what.
Because if your goal doesn't have a time, a finish line, and an environment, it's just a wish. Discipline bypasses the unreliable nature of your mood by making attendance to your fixed, simple system the default action.
Okay, that brings us to our last section. How discipline handles the one thing that motivation is absolutely terrified of.
Failure. Right. Not as a verdict on your capability, but as a critical input to the system. And we have to start with the sheer volume of iteration required for genuine innovation, which is perfectly illustrated by James Dyson.
Dyson's problem was simple, but it was profound. All vacuum cleaners lose suction because the bag gets clogged with dust. It's an engineering flaw.
And his goal was to apply industrial cyclone technology, the kind of thing used to separate sawdust from the air in sawmills, to a domestic product, a permanent, bagless solution.
And his process started not with a flash of inspiration or a big motivational speech. It started with solitary, methodical work in a small coach house next to his home.
So he wasn't relying on a big team of motivated engineers. He was relying on his own relentless personal system of trial and error.
He entered what we call the long middle, the part of innovation that is almost universally unglamorous and boring. Prototype after prototype failed to get the airflow right or the cyclonic efficiency. The work was intrinsically unmotivating because the result of his effort was almost always another small technical failure.
And the number that defines his commitment is just staggering. It should be a benchmark for anyone who gives up after a few tries.
Dyson built 5,127 prototypes.
5,127. Over about 5 years. Before he finally landed on the successful, market-ready bagless design.
Just think about that. That number represents thousands of mornings where the rational, motivated mind would have just said, this is financially unsustainable, it's logically unsound, this is clearly a dead end, go get a job.
Imagine the psychological barrier of showing up for the 5,000th time, knowing that the previous 4,999 versions failed.
This required a total identity shift. His internal monologue couldn't possibly have been, I have to succeed today.
It had to be, I have to build the next version today.
That is the core principle. The opposite of success is not failure, it's stopping. Discipline is the willingness to show up for the next attempt after the last one didn't work. It's about stripping the failure of its emotional weight.
Dyson famously said that you have to get used to failure. He said he actually found it exciting because it was a signal that you were working on a real difficult problem.
Failure is just data. It's not a verdict on your worth. The default habit for most of us is to protect our ego by avoiding tests where we might look wrong or fail spectacularly. Discipline demands the opposite. You must run the experiment, log the data, and iterate.
So if Kobe's genius was anchoring work to a clock, Dyson's was anchoring work to a counter. Progress isn't measured in breakthrough moments, it's measured in the sheer accumulated volume of iteration. Version 1, version 2.
All the way to version 5,127, until reality finally bends to your will.
So how do we apply this? How do we apply this iteration mindset to our own goals? We need systems to manage the emotional drain of constant failure.
First, you have to work in versions, not dreams. Break your massive, intimidating goal into small, measurable sprints. Your aim is V1 of the proposal by Friday, V2 of the rough draft by next Friday. The goal is just completion of the version regardless of its quality.
Second, you need an iteration quota. Just like Kobe tracked 800 makes, you track attempts. Set a weekly number, 3 new pitches sent, 5 micro-experiments run, 7 chapters outlined. The quota prioritizes the volume of execution over your emotional readiness to execute.
And critically, you have to separate your experiment time from your evaluation time. Dyson built first, and he judged later. Most of us judge our work, or worse, ourselves, while we're still building it, and that guarantees we stop early.
So to prevent failure from becoming emotional, you need a system.
A system. After every attempt, write down a one-line learning. What specifically did I learn from V4, and how does that inform V5? That one sentence neutralizes the emotional cost and turns failure into progress.
This focus on consistent output and failure as data, it leads us perfectly to Howard Schultz at Starbucks. He realized that discipline isn't just about innovation, it's about maintaining a non-negotiable standard even after you've succeeded.
By 2008, Schultz had returned to the CEO role, and he found a company that had drifted. In the massive rush for speed and volume, the craft, the very foundation of the Starbucks experience, was leaking away.
And the symbol of this failure was the sloppy espresso shots being pulled by the baristas.
The problem wasn't a lack of motivated employees, they were working hard. It was a lack of systemic discipline in upholding a quality standard under the pressure of daily operations. The speed of the drive-thru had overridden the integrity of the process.
And Schultz realized that just sending out a memo or doing some incremental fixes wasn't going to work.
He needed an unavoidable financial commitment to the standard, so his solution was radical and extremely costly. He decided to close all 7,100 U.S. stores for an entire afternoon to retrain 135,000 baristas.
That decision cost millions and millions of dollars in lost revenue, which is a powerful demonstration. It proves that discipline sometimes requires you to trade short-term comfort for long-term consistency.
He was sending a message to the market, and more importantly, to his employees. This standard is worth more than a day's profits.
So what did the training focus on?
The fundamentals. The specific technique for the perfect pour, which they described as pouring like honey. But the key line, the moment that formalized the discipline, was about granting permission. Schultz told them, "If the espresso is not good enough, you have my permission to pour it out and begin again."
That is a perfect definition of discipline in a system. It's not just intensity, it's quality repeated under pressure.
He gave 135,000 people the non-negotiable authority to enforce the standard, even if it was inconvenient, even if it was costly, even if it slowed down the queue of waiting customers.
Growth without a foundation of discipline is just the expansion of sloppiness.
Exactly. Schultz recognized that sometimes you have to stop the entire machine to rebuild the standard. You have to ensure that your process is producing quality, not just quantity.
So to apply this to our own lives, we first have to define good enough in one observable, measurable sentence. What does a perfect shot actually mean in your work?
If you're a salesperson, a perfect call ends with a confirmed next step. If you're a writer, a perfect page adheres to a specific citation style. You have to remove the vagueness.
And then you have to institute the pour it out rule. Decide in advance what you will redo instead of shipping. Will you redo a sloppy email? Will you start a rushed workout over from the beginning?
You have to create a clear line that, once it's crossed, mandates a correction, even if it forces you to slow down. That refusal to compromise on the smallest unit of your work, that is discipline.
Okay, so for the micro steps that integrate both Dyson's iteration and Schultz's standard. First, define your version 1 outcome for a major project.
Then, run a 7-day iteration sprint, focus only on volume, get the reps in, and log one learning line every single day.
And then immediately after that, run a 7-day craft week. A week where you focus only on fundamentals and correctness, refusing to ship anything that falls below your newly defined standard.
This has been a profound look at how architecture really does beat adrenaline, how systems can overcome the tyranny of mood.
We've synthesized the strategies of these high-stakes performers and leaders across 4 really distinct dimensions, and I think we've proven that consistency is something you engineer. It's not something you inherit.
We established that motivation is a fleeting mood. Discipline is an enduring architecture. So let's just quickly review the major lessons we distilled from all this source material.
First, from Michael Phelps, we learned to rehearse the worst chaos. Preload your automatic response because your preparation is what determines your ceiling when the pressure really hits.
Second, with Paul O'Neill, we understood the immense leverage you get from using keystone habits. Stop scattering your effort across 7 priorities. Concentrate on one non-negotiable process that forces integrity throughout your entire system.
Third, channeling Kobe Bryant and Eliud Kipchoge, we learned we have to anchor our work to fixed time and environment. Convert your vague intentions into a hard calendar event, define a measurable finish line, and design your life your own personal Kaptagat camp so that showing up is the path of least resistance.
And finally, guided by James Dyson and Howard Schultz, we learn to treat failure as necessary data and to constantly correct the standard. You embrace iteration by working in versions, not dreams, and you ensure your discipline manifests as quality repeated under pressure, even when it's painful or costly.
And that brings us right back to the central contrast we started with. If your goal doesn't have a time, a non-negotiable standard, and a measurable finish line, it is just a wish. It's not a goal.
The ultimate objective is to build a life where showing up to do the essential work is the easiest choice you can possibly make, not because you woke up feeling inspired, but because the system itself requires it.
And here is the final provocative thought we want to leave you with this week. If discipline truly is freedom from the tyranny of your moods, then what is the single, absolute, non-negotiable standard, your personal pour-it-out rule that you need to install in your life right now?
What is the one thing you are currently shipping, putting out into the world that you know is below your potential? And how will you commit, starting today, to throwing it out and beginning again?
Let that question guide your systems this week.